Welcome to the Love Story with Lisa channel. Today, we're bringing you a brand new story. I may have acted rashly. After all, she belonged to the household of Duke Harrison. Your family comes from noble ranks with many rituals and traditions. I don't know if what I did violated any taboos. But at the time, I truly couldn't bear to let her become a wandering ghost with no place to rest. What do you think about this? Madame Margaret Du's nose stung, and her eyes turned red, on behalf of the Du family. And on behalf of Madame Julia Jo, I sincerely thank you. On New Year's Eve, snowflakes filled the sky outside. Snow was a sign of a good harvest in the coming year. To match the festive mood, I deliberately opened the bag of sweets that the mysterious gentleman had given me. The first one to smell them was Annie Du. She ran over immediately, her eyes lighting up with excitement. Milk candy. I laughed and poured the candies onto the small table on the heated Kong bed. Have you eaten these before? Yes. My uncle always brought lots of milk candies whenever he came to the residence of Duke Harrison Du. Annie pointed her small finger at Jian. He likes them the most. Uncle loves him the most too. I was surprised. Jian, who was usually so cold and reserved, actually liked sweet milk candy. Then I remembered, he was still only a 6-year-old child. No matter how heavy his thoughts were, he was still just a child. When the younger kids saw the candy, drool almost poured out of their mouths. In that case, I let them eat as much as they wanted. Let these rare sweets sweeten their mouths and warm their hearts. As for this year's New Year, I simply couldn't lie to myself and say it was a happy one. How could a family shattered and scattered by misfortune truly celebrate with joy? Watching Madame Margaret Du struggle to maintain her calm smile. Listening to the two children quietly speak of the past days they missed, a faint sadness always lingered in my heart. What was the new year, really? Perhaps it was simply this scene before us. No matter how many tears were shed during the night, when morning came, the days of the 12th month would still continue as usual. In the blink of an eye, it was already the 6th day of the first lunar month. Our whole family began another busy year. Grandma Li busied herself mending clothes, making thick shoe soles, and sewing garments for the 9 members of our household. My father took advantage of the time before the farming season began to go into the mountains to chop wood, break stones, and dig yellow clay. My mother looked after little Liu Chen while preparing 2 meals a day for everyone. Lily Chen led Annie Du to take care of the chicks. Jian began preparing for the days when he would soon attend the academy. And as for me, I once again carried my shoulder pole to town to sell sesame cakes. As for Madame Margaret Du, ever since she was born she had been a noble lady. Servants and wet nurses had handled everything for her. She had never needed to lift a finger to do any work. Even the simplest sewing task was beyond her. She had grown old without learning such things and sometimes seemed almost helpless. Often she sat on a stone in the courtyard, sighing. One day I squatted beside the stove, baking cakes, and teasing her with a smile. Madame Margaret, do you know any simple but delicious dishes? Spring will be arriving soon. I want to make a few new foods to sell so the customers can try something different, and maybe earn a little more silver. Of course I do. Her eyes lit up immediately. If there was anything she was good at, it was food. I nodded eagerly and began flattering her. Yes, yes. You are the great food expert of Peachwater Village. Please help think of a few dishes for me. Tomorrow I'll try making them right away. That's easy. Just wait. Before she even finished speaking, she excitedly went inside to write down the recipes. During the first month of the year, fewer people went out, so my business was not very prosperous. Each day I only earned 20 or 30 copper coins. But my father was the opposite. He worked with great enthusiasm. In less than half a month, piles of logs, stones, and yellow clay had filled half our courtyard. Curious, I secretly asked Grandmolly, "What is father doing?" Grandmolly curled her lips, but the corners of her mouth lifted slightly. That stubborn donkey heard someone say that boys and girls shouldn't sleep in the same room after the age of 7. So now he wants to build a house. A house? Grandmolly pointed to the empty patch of land beside our home, right there. Your father wants to build 3 rooms for Madame Margaret and her grandchildren to live in. Oh. Do we have enough money for that? Grandmolly snorted, the 20 taels of silver from before, after buying dried meat, fox fur, and a few other things. We still have more than 10 taels left. Your father said that after the first month passes, he'll ask a few villagers to help build the house. If it weren't for the taboo against breaking ground during the first month, he would have started already. I laughed. What's going on with father lately? It's like he's become a completely different person. Grandmolly looked both annoyed and amused. She reached out and pinched my cheek. Who talks about their father like that? Your father may not be very clever, but his heart is not bad. Grandma, what mother talks about her son like that? I teased. On the 15th day of the first lunar month, Jian officially turned 7. I took him to enroll at Bamboo Pavilion Academy. It was the only academy in Taoyuan town. Although the buildings looked somewhat old and worn, the academy had a strong reputation throughout the surrounding villages. From Peachwater village to Taoyuan town was 16 li. In the village, Samuel Zhao drove an ox cart to town every morning and returned in the afternoon. A round trip cost only 1 copper coin. If the driver had been a young man, I might not have dared to let Jian ride, but since it was Uncle Zhao, I felt completely at ease. He drove the ox cart extremely slowly. As he drove, he also collected manure along the road, whether it was cow dung, horse dung, or donkey droppings. He never missed a single pile. Everything went into the basket on his cart. For farmers, manure was treasure. Nothing was better as fertilizer for the fields. Jian sat in the ox cart, while I walked beside it carrying my shoulder pole. Sometimes there were very few passengers on the cart. At those times, Uncle Zhao would smile kindly and wink at me. "Chunner, come sit on the cart. We're all villagers here." Of course I didn't refuse, but every time I did, would take 2 sesame cakes from my basket and give them to him. Life had not been easy for Uncle Zhao. After his sons married, they split into separate households, and his daughters-in-law refused to support their elderly parents. With his health growing weaker, Uncle Zhao had no choice but to drag his aging body along, earning a living by driving the ox cart and collecting manure. Actually, I had wanted Jian to stay at the academy. That way he wouldn't have to travel back and forth every day. But even though he was still young, Jian already had his own thoughts. "Big sister, I want to bring back what I learn every day and teach Annie Du and Lily Chen." Bamboo Pavilion Academy did not accept female students, and our family had no money to hire a private tutor. Jian's idea truly killed 2 birds with 1 stone. Annie and Lily might be girls, but even though people often said that a woman's virtue lay in having no talent, I never believed such words. Anyone who could read and learn, no matter who they were, would live more freely. What was the point of living an entire life in ignorance? Wasn't life meant to be lived with some comfort and dignity? After settling Jian into the academy, I finally had time to follow the recipes Madame Margaret had written down. One after another, I made mung bean cakes, turmeric bean pastries, and chestnut cakes. At the same time, my father had begun building the new house. The villagers were honest and kind. They helped one another without asking for money. As long as they were fed 3 full meals a day, that was enough. They worked quickly and didn't spare their strength. In less than half a month, the new house was finished. Standing nearby, Madame Margaret Dew sighed with emotion. The people in the countryside are truly simple and kind. They're nothing like the people in the capital, where everyone carries endless schemes and cunning in their hearts. This time, my father truly gave it his all. Not only did he build the house, he even invited a carpenter to make a whole set of new furniture, cabinets, tables, bookshelves, writing desks, and more. There was even a chess table, at least, that was what I heard from the carpenter. He said that once, he had arranged a study room for a young master in the town, and there had been a chess table in it. My father faced the curious gazes of everyone around him. His face turned red as he scratched his head awkwardly, trying to explain himself. I burst out laughing and tugged at Grandma Lee's sleeve. "Grandma, this time you'll have to make 2 more pairs of cloth shoes for father." Grandma Lee looked at my father with a proud expression, as if she were thinking, "At last, my foolish son has grown up. 3 rooms built just like that." Now we even had money to spare. Grandma Lee had already been quite generous. What money could possibly be left? I was afraid that the 20 taels of silver had already been completely spent. Brother Leo Lu's sister-in-law had just given birth, so since the new year he had not gone out to sell goods. Because of that, I went to town myself to set up my stall. With a few new dishes added to my menu, business gradually improved. By the 3rd month, I could earn 60 or 70 copper coins a day. After packing up my stall, if it was still early, I would go to Bamboo Pavilion Academy to help sweep and clean. Although the academy was managed very strictly, no one could possibly find fault with a hard-working village girl who always had a smile on her face. Before long, I had become quite familiar with the gatekeepers, the errand workers, and the cooks inside the academy. "Chunner, here to pick up your little brother after school again?" One spring evening at sunset, I had just arrived at the academy gate when Uncle Wu, Victor Wu, who was guarding the entrance, greeted me cheerfully. I lifted my face with a smile and handed him a small package of mung bean cakes. "Yes, Uncle." There weren't many customers today, so I packed up a little late. "Oh my, now I feel embarrassed taking these." Uncle Wu happily accepted the cakes and pointed toward a nearby alley. "Just now a man took your little brother away. You should go check." I froze. "Who was it?" "I don't know, but he seemed like someone familiar." Someone familiar? Most of Jian's acquaintances were here in Taoyuan town. Who could it be? Could it be child traffickers pretending to be acquaintances? Recently there had been rumors in town that a group of kidnappers had appeared. 2 or 3 families had already lost their children. In our family, Jian was treated like a precious golden child under the protection of the Bodhisattva. If he fell into the hands of those people, how could he possibly remain safe? At that thought, my whole body turned cold. Without even saying goodbye to Uncle Wu, I dashed toward the alley like the wind. "Jian! Jian!" I ran while shouting. My voice almost broke immediately. At the corner of the alley stood a young man wearing a light blue robe. He frowned slightly as he looked at me. "You're a young lady." Shouting so loudly like this, where are your manners? Before he could finish speaking, I charged straight into his chest. He staggered backward, letting out a soft groan of pain. I snatched Annie Dew from his hands and glared at him with tear-filled eyes. "Who exactly are you? What are you trying to do to my little brother?" The man in front of me was a young gentleman with rather familiar features. His willow-shaped eyebrows were especially striking. "So what if you have 2 taels of silver? It's not like I took your money for nothing." The young man rubbed his chest and winced. It took him quite a while before he recovered. What a crazy girl, he muttered half angrily. Half amused, ignoring his mocking tone, I panted heavily and crouched down to grab Annie's hands, checking him from head to toe. Are you all right? You foolish child. Usually you wait for me obediently. Why did you follow someone today? Annie Dew clearly hadn't expected my reaction to be so intense. His face turned bright red. After letting me examine him thoroughly, he muttered softly, Sister. I was wrong. This is my uncle. Even if he's your uncle, you can't just. I suddenly froze. Then I slowly stood up and carefully looked again at the man Annie had called his uncle. Sure enough, I hadn't been mistaken. The man before me had those same willow-shaped eyebrows. Extremely similar to Lady Sophia Dew, the young madam of the Duke's residence. No wonder he had seemed so familiar. His face indeed resembled Lady Sophia somewhat. After all, Annie Dew and Lady Sophia were related. But even if he was her uncle, he still couldn't simply take the child away like that. Jian has been living in my house, I said firmly. He's a child of our family now. If you want to see him, at the very least you should inform me first. I was genuinely angry, so my tone was extremely stiff. These young masters from noble families all had endless schemes hidden in their hearts. Before this, he had deliberately approached me, tested me, and given me opportunities to do business. I had foolishly believed that I was simply lucky. Sure enough, people should never indulge in unrealistic fantasies. That evening, I brought this so-called uncle back to Peachwater Village. The moment Madame Margaret Dew saw him, she burst into tears of shock. Xiaohang. Is it really Xiaohang? The young man immediately dropped to his knees and kowtowed. Madam, this junior has arrived too late. As he spoke, his eyes also reddened. His sorrowful expression made it hard for anyone to blame him for his earlier behavior. This uncle's name was Adrian Wang. He was the youngest son of the head of the Wang family of Qingzhou. The Wang family of Qingzhou had flourished for hundreds of years without decline. In the past, even empresses and prime ministers had come from their lineage. Although the family had weakened in recent generations, they had managed to remain stable through turbulent times by carefully adapting to circumstances. In truth, they simply followed whichever way the wind blew. After the Duke Harrison Dew household met with disaster, the Wang family immediately protected themselves by cutting all ties with the Duke's residence. Not only that, they even expelled Adrian Wang's mother from the Wang family. When Madame Margaret heard Adrian's explanation, she was so shocked that she almost sat straight up in bed. The Wang family acted so heartlessly. You were their legitimate grandson. Adrian Wang's eyes were red as he gave a cold laugh and shook his head. So what if I'm the legitimate grandson? So what if my mother was their legitimate daughter? In the eyes of the Wang family, there may only be profit, no family affection. I feel heartbroken for my eldest sister. She insisted on helping them, yet they showed her no mercy. I no longer wish to acknowledge myself as a member of the Wang family. Madame Margaret sighed heavily. It was the Duke's residence that implicated you. The third prince's concubine and your elder sister are cousins. Adrian Wang looked at her with a complicated expression. In the end, who really implicated whom? Whether the Duke Harrison Dew residence had truly supported Prince Julian or not was, in fact, no longer important. What mattered was that, in the eyes of the world, once such a relationship existed, the Duke's household and the third prince were already considered to be on the same side. Adrian Wang and Lady Sophia Dew were biological siblings. Their bond had always been very deep. After the Duke's residence was confiscated, Adrian had resolutely tried to use the power of the Wang family to rescue his elder sister from her desperate situation. But the Wang family did not allow it. They even confined him. After countless schemes and efforts, Adrian finally managed to escape. Seeing that he stubbornly refused to obey them, the Wang family heartlessly expelled him from the clan and erased his name from the family registry. Yet Adrian Wang was a capable man. With the help of some old friends, he began trading in grain. His journey at the end of last year had not only been a business trip, it had also been an opportunity to travel north and inquire about the situation of the Duke's family. After worrying for half a year, when Madame Margaret Du finally heard that everyone there was safe and sound, she and the 3 members of our household could not help bursting into tears again. Grandma Lee, Lydia Lee, sat to the side, sighing repeatedly in regret. If I had known earlier, I would have made a few more cushions and pairs of gloves. Adrian Wang respectfully bowed deeply toward Grandma Lee. Thank you for sheltering them, Madame Lee. If not for you, Annie Du and the others would have no idea where they might have ended up. And thank you for sewing the fox fur hat. The northern lands are bitterly cold. Thanks to it, this junior managed to endure the journey. I am deeply grateful. Haha. Grandma Lee waved her hand dismissively. That hat was made by my granddaughter, Chloe Chen. Why thank me? I'm already 14 years old now, but still just a child. When the adults talked, children were not supposed to listen, so I obediently blushed and ran outside. But even after I had left the room, I could still hear Grandma Lee speaking loudly inside the house. By seniority, you're her uncle. My granddaughter making a hat for her uncle, isn't that perfectly natural? From the 2nd month onward, Madame Margaret and her 2 grandchildren moved into the newly built house. At first, Madame Margaret kept refusing. I'm only a guest. How could it be that the guest lives in the new house while the host stays in the old one? But my father, Mr. Chen, Daniel Chen, was extremely stubborn. He simply stood there silently without saying a word, making Madame Margaret feel awkward. In the end, she had no choice but to move in. That night, Adrian Wang slept in Annie Du's room. The candlelight inside burned until nearly dawn before it was finally extinguished. The next day, Adrian Wang prepared to leave and bid farewell to everyone. I won't hide it from you both, he said, this July. I must make another trip to Taoyuan town. Please make preparations early. Madame Margaret was delighted. You're going again? Preparing for such a journey required many things: letters, clothing, food, daily necessities, and money. When the topic of money arose, Madame Margaret hesitated slightly, but Adrian Wang quickly understood her concern and immediately said, last year I carried 1,000 taels in banknotes with me. My uncle's household currently lacks nothing in terms of money. As for clothing and supplies, we won't be short of those either. It's only that they cannot stop worrying. Day and night, they long for news of their loved ones. So, madam, you only need to write more letters. A letter from home is worth 1,000 pieces of gold. It can cure the sickness of the heart. Yes, yes, yes. Madame Margaret wiped the corners of her eyes with her padded sleeve. Now Annie Du can write letters too. I'll write together with him. Knowing that Adrian Wang was about to leave, Grandma Lee and my mother busied themselves preparing a large bag of food for him: pickled vegetables, dried mushrooms, persimmon cakes, roasted pine nuts, salted eggs, chestnut pastries. If Adrian Wang had not firmly refused, my father would probably have stuffed too lively. Clucking hens into his arms as well. No, no, this really won't do. Adrian Wang awkwardly tried to take out money to pay. My father immediately grew angry. what are you doing? Looking down on us farmers? In the early spring weather, Adrian Wang looked quite flustered. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Last night he had walked all the way home with us. Early this morning, he had already risen in time to climb onto Samuel Zhao's ox cart. That elegant young gentleman, dressed in a silk robe, now sat on the ox cart hugging a worn bundle of luggage. Meanwhile, Uncle Zhao occasionally shouted as he drove along the road, "Manure! Pick up that manure!" The scene was unbelievably amusing. I tried to hold back my laughter, but in the end I couldn't stop myself. A burst of giggles escaped my mouth. I thought it was someone's hen cackling. Someone joked. The handsome young gentleman realized he was being teased, and his expression became rather unpleasant. I deliberately continued provoking him. "We do have hens at home. If Uncle likes them, next time remember to catch 2 and take them along." Beside me, Annie Du was also trying hard not to laugh. But he couldn't bear to see his uncle so embarrassed, so he tugged at my sleeve in silent pleading. Seeing that, I finally stopped teasing him. After that, none of us spoke for the rest of the journey. Once we reached the town, I sent Annie Du into the academy. Adrian Wang hurriedly turned to leave. Watching his departing figure, I suddenly found it rather amusing again. But then he suddenly stopped and turned around. "I travel for business, wandering from place to place," he said. "If anything happens, send word to the Qingfeng Inn. Don't worry. From now on, all of you will be under my protection." Adrian Wang's. Under the gentle spring breeze and the swaying willow branches, the handsome young man spoke those words to me with great seriousness. When Adrian Wang left Peachwater Village, he had once tried to leave behind several bags of silver, but Madame Margaret refused. With our current status, carrying that much silver with us would bring disaster, not fortune. For people who have fallen from power. For people who had fallen from power, it was necessary to live cautiously and humbly. Besides, in a village there were always many gossiping tongues and endless rumors. In the future, you should come here less often, Madame Margaret Du said. Don't bring trouble upon the Qin family. After the catastrophe of having their property confiscated, Madame Margaret seemed to have gained a deeper understanding of life. Her clear-headedness also influenced Annie Du. Ever since he learned that his parents and grandfather were still safe and sound, the long-absent smile finally returned to his small face. Gradually, he also began talking more. Originally, he had been a lively child, innocent, cheerful, and fond of laughter. As for Annie Du, under the influence of Lily Chen, she had now become a truly wild little girl, pulling up young willow shoots, plucking poplar leaves, picking elm fruits. She often ran around barefoot, hugging tree trunks as thick as her arms could reach and climbing swiftly up to the treetops like a little monkey. And climbing trees wasn't all. Annie Du often fought with the mischievous boys in the village. One day, the second son of Martha Zhang, the widow, spoke ill of Annie and Jian behind their backs. Annie immediately grabbed a stick and chased him while beating him, pursuing him for nearly 2 miles. The boy was half a head taller than her, yet he was so frightened that he ran as if his life depended on it. But even so, compared to Lily Chen, Annie's antics were still nothing. Lily was already 8 years old. She disliked sewing and embroidery, yet she loved doing things that could shake heaven and earth. For instance, pinning someone down and stabbing them repeatedly with a needle. The one doing the stabbing had eyes sparkling like stars. The one being stabbed howled in agony. By now, Lily's reputation as the little demon had spread throughout Peachwater Village. She had become a small tyrant in the village. Yet she insisted loudly that she wasn't a tyrant at all. She was simply performing acupuncture. In the village lived a strange blind old man. It was said that in his youth he had been a rather skilled physician, especially proficient in acupuncture. But one day, he performed acupuncture incorrectly and his patient died. The patient's family naturally reported the matter to the county magistrate. The old man was imprisoned for many years. By the time he was released, his hair had already turned white. His eyes were blind, and his temperament had completely changed. Normally, this eccentric old man lived in seclusion and rarely interacted with the villagers. No one knew how he survived day to day. Yet Lily, the mischievous child, had somehow attached herself to him. She often sneaked off to learn acupuncture from him. Strangely enough, the old man was quite willing to teach her. It had to be said that Lily was truly clever and quick-witted. She had indeed learned a little of the craft. Once, Annie Doo developed severe mouth ulcers and her throat hurt so much that she could barely swallow food. Lily grabbed her hand and swiftly inserted 2 needles into her fingertip, squeezing out a few drops of dark blood. Less than an hour later, Annie's pain had already eased considerably. Another time, Leo Chen caught a cold and developed a high fever in the middle of the night. Without saying a word, Lily sat up and began massaging his arms and fingers. Her movements were skillful, her gaze steady. She truly looked like a young physician. Under Lily's treatment, Leo soon began sweating and fell asleep peacefully. By morning, his fever had broken. This made Lily extremely proud. Dr. Tian had even praised her before. "You're brave and careful. You truly are a natural talent for acupuncture." Beside her, Annie Doo pouted. "But last month you still called him the blind old man." "Well, we weren't familiar with each other yet," Lily replied confidently. Grandmolly was both angry and amused. She reached out and pinched Lily's cheek. "You weren't familiar with him, and you still dared to call him names, you naughty girl. Let me tell you, just because you know a little acupuncture doesn't mean you can poke needles everywhere. Now the children in the village all avoid you. Your bad reputation has already spread hundreds of miles. Just wait," Lily said proudly. "One day they'll come begging me to treat them with acupuncture." Annie Doo wrinkled her nose and stuck out her tongue. "You're bragging." Lily didn't dare argue with Grandmolly, but she had no hesitation bullying Annie Doo. She folded her arms, glared fiercely, and shouted, "Annie Doo!" Sure enough, Annie immediately shrank back and ran away. While running, she pleaded, "Sister, I'll go pick elm fruits for you. Do you want elm fruits to eat?" One was like a little wild cat that knew how to climb. The other was like a roaring tiger. Was this the legendary power of bloodline suppression? Grandmolly sat nearby making thick shoe soles and sighed. "These 2 girls are so mischievous. How will they ever get married in the future?" But Madame Margaret Doo felt comforted instead. "Our Chloe is already remarkable enough. She now carries half the burden of the household. As for the other 2, Lily is clever, and Annie is brave. They're both good children." "Madam, I don't like hearing that," Grandmolly replied. "When they grow up, I'm afraid the matchmakers will trample down the threshold of our house." Although she felt proud in her heart, Grandmolly deliberately spoke with mock disdain. "I'm afraid it won't be matchmakers trampling the threshold," she said. "It'll be the families whose children were bullied by them, coming to break down our door." Then she suddenly remembered something. "Speaking of which, Annie's uncle is such a fine young man. Why did his marriage fall apart?" Thinking of Adrian Wang, Grandmolly couldn't help feeling indignant for him. Madame Margaret gave a cold laugh. "The Chui family in Qizhou? They're nothing more than greedy opportunists. When Adrian Wang was expelled from his clan, they refused the marriage for fear their daughter would be implicated. In my opinion, he's fortunate not to marry into such a family. There are many good girls in this world. One day, the Chui family will surely regret it." people who flattered the powerful while forgetting loyalty, who climbed upward and trampled those below, who despised the poor and favored the rich. Families of influence never lacked such tactics. They were simply better educated than ordinary people. On the surface, they appeared righteous and moral. In truth, their hearts were dark. They only knew how to cloak themselves in the excuse of following the times. What kind of world was this? Our family owned 8 mu of land. 3 mu had already been planted with winter wheat last autumn. The remaining 5 mu, my father planned to plant corn, soybeans, cotton, and sesame. By the 4th month in the countryside, spring farming became extremely busy, looking at other families' fields already planted while ours had not even finished plowing. I had no choice but to ask Samuel Zhao to help take Annie Du to and from the academy for a few days. Meanwhile, I stayed home to help my father with the planting. Grandma Li and Madame Margaret were both elderly. In Peachwater Village, old women usually stayed at home doing needlework. They rarely went to the fields to work. My father was a man who valued his dignity above all else. He absolutely refused to let the 2 elderly ladies set foot in the fields. My mother, Mrs. Chen, Meilin Chen, had been left with lingering illness after giving birth to Liu Chen. All year round she felt a deep chill in her bones. Even in the scorching heat of summer, she still needed to wear a padded jacket before she felt comfortable. Whenever she exerted herself even slightly, sweat would pour from her body. So fieldwork was simply beyond her strength. As for those mischievous children of ours, there was no relying on them. Thus the burden of spring plowing and planting fell entirely on the shoulders of my father and me. During those days, father and I spent the entire day working in the fields. Even lunch was delivered to us by Lily Chen. Work faster, shouted village chief Li's voice from somewhere nearby. He says it will rain tomorrow. Don't delay the planting. Just as we arrived at the fields that morning, third Uncle Wang from the neighboring plot was already working furiously with his entire family of 6. He called out anxiously to my father, Daniel. Hurry up. Got it. My father immediately quickened his pace. For farmers, everything depended on the farming season. If spring plowing was missed, the entire year could end in hunger. But hurrying didn't really help. We simply didn't have enough manpower. That morning, father and I took turns guiding the plow, scattering seeds, and dragging the rake. By the time we paused, our backs were soaked with sweat, yet we had only finished planting 1 mu of land. 2 more mus still remained. In the afternoon, we would have to push ourselves even harder. Father, maybe we should ask someone from the village to help? I squatted on the ground, panting heavily, my throat dry as if it were burning. My father's face was drenched with sweat, streaked with muddy lines where the sweat had washed through the dust. It's the busy season, he said. Every household is occupied. Who would have spare hands? Overhead, several large dark clouds drifted across the sky. A cool wind blew across my sweat-damp hair and neck. Rain was coming, but the rain had arrived at exactly the worst possible time. Father. Big sister. Someone has come to help. My uncle is here. Suddenly, from the distant edge of the field, I saw 4 or 5 figures approaching along with a single ox. Running ahead was Annie Du. Behind her walked a young man with willow-shaped eyebrows, Adrian Wang. Those noble young masters usually wore jade hairpins, silk robes, ornate belts, and fine boots. So was he here to work? Or to show off his wealth, big sister? My uncle came to visit Annie Du, and when he heard our fields weren't finished, he brought people to help. Annie ran up to me, her little face flushed pink as she grinned happily. I couldn't help pinching her cheek. They had truly arrived at the perfect moment. Father and I had never been good at socializing. but the moment he saw the ox, Father's face broke into a broad grin he could hardly suppress. Good. 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 This ox is excellent. The men Adrian Wang had brought with him were all skilled farmers. They didn't waste words. The moment they arrived, they immediately began working. Suddenly, I found that I had nothing left to do. Everyone was busy, everyone. Except Adrian Wang. He stood with his hands behind his back like some landlord inspecting his estate. And if supervising wasn't enough, he even curled his lips in mockery at me. I plopped down onto the hard ground and rubbed my hands fiercely across my face. Then I lifted my head and grinned at him. Well? What about now? He looked at me, and his face suddenly reddened. Then he abruptly turned his head away. Beside me, Annie giggled and reached out to touch my face. Big sister, you look just like Black Tiger. Black Tiger was the black cat raised by Lily. From head to tail it was pitch black. But don't underestimate it. Catching mice was its greatest skill. One night I heard crunching sounds beside my ear but paid it no attention. The next morning I saw bloodstains and tiny bones. Only then did I realize that Black Tiger had caught a mouse beside my pillow and eaten it right there. After finishing its meal, it had calmly curled up and slept beside my pillow. And now Annie was saying I looked like Black Tiger. How could I possibly tolerate that? I grabbed Annie and tickled her mercilessly until she collapsed with laughter. By the time our playful scuffle ended, the dark clouds above had grown even heavier. The wind carried the scent of approaching rain. 5 or 6 people and 1 ox worked quickly. Soon the remaining 2 mu of land were fully planted. Just as we returned home, the long-awaited spring rain finally began to fall in a gentle drizzle. Grandmolly had already heard the news and prepared a lavish dinner. There were baked flatbreads, pork bone soup, wind-cured dried meat, and wild vegetables mixed with sesame. Adrian Wang seemed particularly interested in the sesame wild vegetables. The dish was tender, crisp, and slightly bitter at first bite. Yet the more you chewed, the more delicious it became. Since he had mocked me earlier that afternoon, I naturally found an excuse to tease him back. These are wild weeds, I said. They grow everywhere in the mountains. What's wrong, young Master Wang? Have you never seen them before? Grandmolly, who was sitting several seats away, still managed to tap my head sharply with her chopsticks. Call him uncle. What, young master? Nonsense. After dinner, the rain still hadn't stopped. My mother prepared a farmer's tea, dandelion leaf tea. My father enthusiastically invited everyone to drink. Adrian Wang quietly tried to slip away. Last time he had already experienced my father's overwhelming rural hospitality. Perhaps he couldn't endure it again. So this time he quickly picked up a bowl, gulped down several mouthfuls, and tried to escape, but the house was small, and outside the rain continued to fall. Where could he possibly hide? The west room was occupied by my father entertaining guests. In the east room, Grandmolly particularly loved asking him about his birth year and zodiac. After thinking for a moment, Adrian finally chose to sit on a stool in the kitchen, directly opposite me, where I was tending the fire. I had just washed my face, tied my hair neatly, and changed into a clean set of simple village clothes. Under the flickering firelight, I felt refreshed and light. Even my mood had become unusually cheerful. Dandelion tea may taste bitter, I said while looking at Adrian across the fire, but it clears heat and removes toxins. Drinking more of it won't harm you at all, young master. I spoke gently. Adrian Wang's face turned red as he nodded. Very good. It was obvious he was saying it reluctantly. I laughed. Lying isn't good, you know. Don't teach Annie Do and the others bad habits in the future. I don't need to teach them, he replied calmly. With you around, that's already more than enough. Oh. I raised my eyebrows in surprise. You don't despise me for being a village girl? Adrian Wang frowned, pretending to be annoyed. When did I ever say I despised you? Tilting my head, I smiled at him. It seemed he had remembered what had happened in the fields that afternoon, because a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. You're still young, he said, and your temper is small. I was only joking earlier. Haha. My temper is small? In what way? To be honest, I simply found teasing him very entertaining. Outside, the spring rain drizzled softly. Inside the kitchen, the fire crackled in the stove. We sat there for a long time, sometimes talking, sometimes falling silent. By the time the rain stopped, it was already quite late. Suddenly Adrian Wang spoke. There is a shop across from Bamboo Pavilion Academy that's currently vacant. It costs 90 taels of silver. I've already bought it. You should think about what kind of business to run there. When I return from Suizhou, tell me your idea. I stared at him in shock. So expensive? He spoke lightly. It's not expensive. There are 3 rooms in the courtyard behind the shop. In summer, the Qingfeng River may flood, and traveling will become dangerous. At that time, Annie Du can stay at the shop. And you won't have to carry your goods through the streets to sell them anymore. You're a young girl. Wandering around like that, if you encounter bad people, it will only cause trouble. But a shop can't stop bad people either, I said. It's fine, he replied calmly. The county office is less than 100 meters away from the shop. I laughed. You've already thought everything through, young master. What more can I say? But there is one thing I would like to ask of you. My aunt married in Suizhou nearly 10 years ago, and we haven't heard from her for a long time. Could you visit her on behalf of my grandmother and see if she is doing well? My grandmother worries about her constantly, so much that she's fallen ill. That's not difficult, Adrian Wang said. Give me the address. But don't use the word ask. All along, it's we who owe the Chen family far too much. The flickering firelight made his already flushed face look even redder, and somehow even more handsome. Adrian Wang handed me the key to the shop. When I went to take a look, I realized that 90 taels of silver had truly not been wasted. The shop had previously sold food, tables, chairs, kitchen utensils, and even supply channels for rice, flour, and cooking oil were all left behind by the previous owner. Behind the shop there were living quarters, a well, and even a stone mill. Everything was already prepared. Adrian Wang's judgment was truly excellent. A shop like this, located right beside the academy and near the county office, was indeed a hot commodity. After thinking about it carefully, I decided the shop could sell small wontons and sesame cakes. We could also sell some pastries and daily soups. And of course, Madame Margaret Du was a culinary expert. I would have to ask her to write down a few more recipes. Spring gradually arrived, and all living things began to flourish. While I was devoting all my thoughts to earning more money, several major events also took place in the capital. First, Prince Julian, the third prince, received an imperial pardon. Second, the fourth prince was placed under house arrest. Third, the emperor changed the reign title once again. To be fair, the current emperor had ruled for 20 years and could truly be called a wise ruler. Under his governance, the borders had remained peaceful, and the people rarely suffered famine. Of course, natural disasters were another matter entirely, but even so, as an emperor grew old, it was difficult to avoid becoming suspicious. He began to grow wary of the young princes who were full of potential. He suppressed one prince, only to find another displeasing. He imprisoned one, then suspected another of harboring ambitions. Not only that, he had also begun taking alchemical elixirs, and he changed the reign title again and again, from Longqing to Yongchang, and then to Wanhui. The common people were utterly confused. Every day they wondered, what reign year is it now? It was truly troublesome, but for farmers like us, it didn't matter much. No matter what the reign title was, we still had to farm the land to fill our stomachs. This year brought abundant rain. From late spring to early summer, several heavy downpours fell. Right when Annie Du was pestering me to cook pagoda tree blossom rice, Adrian Wang returned. Not only did he return, he also brought my aunt and her child back with him. My aunt, Aunt Linda Chen, had once been the beauty of Peach Water Village. Back then, many men in the village had wanted to marry her. But one year, a distant relative visited our home and said that in Suizhou there was a cousin from a wealthy family. He was said to be gentle in temperament. Most importantly, he had no mother. If Aunt Linda married into that family, she wouldn't have to endure a mother-in-law's oppression and would instead directly become the mistress of the household. Grandma Li was tempted. She accepted 10 taels of silver as the bride price and married her daughter off all the way to Suizhou. In the early years, although Suizhou was over 1,000 li away from Yenzhou, Aunt Linda still returned every year or two to visit Peach Water Village for several days. That was because her husband often traveled to the capital for business. But in recent years, her husband's business gradually shifted toward the southern border regions. Not only did she stop returning home, even her letters became rare. Because of this, Grandma Li often scolded bitterly, "Ungrateful girl. Once a daughter gets married, she forgets her own mother. All the years of raising her were wasted." Yet deep in her heart, Grandma Li secretly shed tears of regret. Ah! If I had known. I shouldn't have married her so far away. If something unfortunate happened, her natal family wouldn't even be able to reach her in time to help. Who could have expected? This time Aunt Linda would return with her son and all her belongings. Our household instantly became a chaotic scene. Dogs barking, chickens flapping everywhere, crying, shouting, and voices overlapping in complete uproar. Rumors that the daughter of the Chen family had been abandoned began spreading throughout the village. It all started when Martha Zhang saw my aunt step down from a carriage, enter the house, and throw her arms around Grandma Li while crying bitterly. In less than a week, the news had already swept through the entire village like incense smoke drifting everywhere. Almost the whole village came to our house. Those who were close to us crowded inside, squeezing together as they held my aunt's hands, crying and offering comfort. Those who weren't close stood outside in the courtyard, clinging to the window frames and peeking in curiously. It was absolute chaos. I was even pushed to the very edge of the crowd. "What is that old woman Lu inside saying?" An auntie beside me craned her neck impatiently and called out to Mrs. Lu, who was clinging to the window. Mrs. Lu had been squeezed and jostled so much that her hair was disheveled, her shoes crooked, and her body swaying unsteadily. Yet she still found the time to spread the news. Widow Zhang is just talking nonsense. Linger wasn't abandoned. Her husband died, and those relatives of his want to seize all the property. Besides, doesn't Linger have a son? If there's a son, how could they take everything? Wait, let me listen a bit more. Ah. I heard it clearly now. Serves them right. Linger said someone helped the mother and son. They even reported the matter to the county office and managed to protect the property. But she and her son don't want to stay there anymore, so they came back. They're not going back. The auntie beside me rolled her eyes and smiled so widely that her eyelashes almost disappeared. Well, what a coincidence. My younger brother just lost his wife not long ago. Earlier I was thinking that Linger and my brother are truly a match made in heaven. Her calculations were so obvious it was as if the beads of her abacus were about to fly straight into Mrs. Lu's face. Mrs. Lu immediately snapped back, "Bah! Just a moment ago you were calling me Old Lady Lu. You're truly a frog at the bottom of a well. You want to stick feathers into yourself and pretend to be a phoenix? Does your brother even know who he is, daring to reach for Linger? Go look at your own face in the latrine first." The crowd burst into laughter. Standing beside me, Adrian Wang chuckled softly. The people of Peachwater Village really are quite skilled with their words. I raised an eyebrow and shot him a warning glance. Skilled how? He immediately changed his tone, sounding slightly apologetic. Skilled. In a good way. It had been nearly 2 months since we last saw each other. His expression seemed even more composed and refined than before. He looked even more handsome and noble. This journey of his could not have been easy. A merchant from another region like him had managed to retrieve my aunt's property from those wolf-like relatives of the Zhou family and escort the mother and son safely back. Among all the emotions swirling in my heart, how could a single word of thank you possibly express everything? That night, after everyone had finally left, the oil lamp was lit. Adrian Wang had also gone back. At last, our whole family could sit together on the heated Kong bed and talk quietly. Grandma Li, my mother Meilin Chen, and my Aunt Linda Chen held each other and cried uncontrollably. They cried as if their hearts were being torn apart. Even Madame Margaret Du, who was sitting nearby, could not hold back her tears. My father, Daniel Chen, was a stubborn man. Although he knew his younger sister had suffered greatly, it wasn't convenient for him to ask too many questions. Instead, he pulled my cousin Victor Zhou aside and began chatting about random things. After all, one's mother is the most important person in the world. My father seemed especially fond of this nephew of his. Victor Zhou was 2 years older than me. He was a young man with thick eyebrows and large eyes. Calm and honest by nature, my cousin could read and knew how to keep account books. My aunt and my late uncle had raised him very well. The arrival of my aunt and cousin filled our entire family with surprise and joy. Grandma Li wanted the mother and son to stay in Peachwater Village and live together with our family. But my aunt had her own plans. She said, "Mother, once a daughter marries, she cannot remain in her parents' home forever." This time, Victor and I returned to Yenzhou because we planned to open a shop in town. After all, my husband used to run a business. Victor has already learned 70 or 80% of the trade. It's just that renting a good shop right now is difficult, so we may have to stay here for a while. Hearing this, an idea suddenly flashed through my mind. I immediately said, "Aunt, cousin. The restaurant belonging to Annie Du's maternal uncle, wouldn't that be a good opportunity? Would you like to temporarily manage it for me?" Hearing this, Madame Margaret Du clapped her hands and burst out laughing. This is exactly what people mean by a pillow appearing just when one feels sleepy. Just yesterday Sanier was still worrying about where to find someone trustworthy to help. And today you two arrive. In my opinion, you should stay at the shop for now, help take care of it, and then plan your future slowly. My aunt immediately said with delight, "That would be wonderful. But the shop belongs to Annie's uncle. If my son and I stay there, would that really be appropriate?" My cousin Victor Zhou blushed and said awkwardly, "Mother, we should pay rent for the place. Otherwise we would feel uneasy." But Madame Margaret Dew waved her hand dismissively. We're all family here. Don't speak like strangers. In the future, you'll also help cook wontons and greet the customers. So it doesn't count as staying there for free. Just stay with peace of mind. To be honest, I had underestimated the abilities of my aunt and cousin. Since the wonton shop opened, everything, from purchasing supplies to serving customers and managing the accounts, was handled by my cousin. As for cleaning, lighting the fire, and washing the dishes, my aunt took care of it all. Aside from cooking, I practically had nothing else to do. Students from the Bamboo Pavilion Academy heard that a new wonton shop had opened, and they all came to try it. A bowl of fresh pork wontons with chicken broth, plus 2 large sesame cakes, cost only 15 copper coins. It was enough to satisfy the appetites of young men in their growing years. Before long, they became regular customers. For students from poorer families who couldn't afford the pork wontons, I would give them a bowl of hot soup along with a sesame cake. I'm not a bodhisattva. I can't save the suffering of the entire world, but giving away a little free soup is something I can do, after all, when stewing chicken. Adding a few extra ladles of water costs almost nothing. Unexpectedly, that single bowl of hot soup deeply moved the students. Some of them even composed poems praising my wonton shop, and secretly, they gave me a nickname, the Little Wonton She-Sure. Good heavens! It was enough to make me die of embarrassment. She-Sure, I was nothing more than a village girl whose whole body smelled of scallions, pork lard, and sesame oil. When the shop first opened, Adrian Wang had already left for Luoyang. By the time I finished calculating the shop's first month of earnings, he finally returned, dusty and travel-worn. I handed him the account book, unable to hide my pride. Look. After deducting the expenses, the net profit is 18 taels of silver. We've struck it rich. But Adrian Wang didn't take the book. Instead, he glanced toward the kitchen where my cousin Victor Zhou was washing dishes. Then he asked casually, "Your cousin is staying in the shop?" I nodded. That's right. My aunt and cousin are living in the back courtyard. His expression paused slightly. After a moment, he said, "It's good to have the two of them helping." Your cousin. He's 17 this year? 16. He's 2 years older than you. Is he engaged? I looked at him in surprise. This man was truly strange. After not seeing each other for so long, instead of asking about the shop's profits and losses, he suddenly began asking about my cousin. Were they that familiar with each other? How would I know? My cousin had grown up in Suizhou, while I had grown up in Yenzhou. If he were engaged, would he run all the way here just to tell me, after an entire month of hard work that had left my back aching and my shoulders sore? Adrian Wang came back only to ask these pointless questions. My mood instantly turned sour. My voice also became sharp. Seeing that I was getting angry, Adrian Wang wisely took the account book. All right. As expected of the Little Wonton She-Sure. Humph. I shot him a glare. Still not satisfied, the room suddenly fell silent. It felt as if an invisible current was flowing between the two of us. After a long moment of quiet, Adrian Wang finally couldn't bear it any longer. Looking both helpless and innocent, he tugged lightly at my sleeve. His voice carried a hint of pleading. I'm not very good at comforting people. Just smile once, will you? I turned my face away. No. He pressed his lips together, as if making a sudden decision. Then he leaned closer and looked straight at me. How about this? I'll perform a special trick for you. The moment he finished speaking, his slender eyebrows suddenly came alive. They began dancing together. They rose and fell like ocean waves, sometimes towering like mountains, sometimes flowing softly like rippling water. They kept moving in the most ridiculous way. I instantly burst out laughing. This is just too funny. Seeing me laugh so hard that my stomach hurt, Adrian Wang's face immediately turned bright red. But no matter how red it became, he couldn't hide the faint pride in his expression. When I was young, I was very mischievous. I often made my elder sister angry. But every time, I used this trick, making my eyebrows dance, to make her laugh. Your sister must have loved you very much. After laughing enough, I gradually calmed down. I poured him a cup of tea, then I sat across from him and spoke slowly. When Adrian Wang mentioned his elder sister, a trace of warmth appeared on his face. My mother died early. My elder sister raised me. She was beautiful and gentle. To me, she was like a mother. She would never abandon me. So that's how it was. Then who was the one who drove you out of the Wang family? Have you ever heard the saying, where there is a stepmother, there is also a stepfather? Suddenly, everything became clear to me. So it was an evil stepmother, and the father wasn't a good man either. I had heard stories like this many times before. In the countryside, there were plenty of cruel stepmothers. They fed their own children pastries while giving their stepchildren nothing but chaff. Of course, most of that cruelty came from poverty. But I had never expected that even within wealthy and prestigious families, a stepmother, who lacked nothing to eat or wear, could still be so heartless. Adrian Wang laughed. Well said. Actually, I envy you very much. Your family is very good. Of course they are. I had always been proud of my family. Don't be fooled by how stubborn my father Daniel Chen could be. When my mother Meilin Chen gave birth to me and Lily Chen but couldn't bear a son, even the villagers secretly pointed fingers behind her back. Yet my father had never once spoken a harsh word to her, and although Grandma Li could be strict, her heart was very kind. In the village there was a lazy old beggar named Old Beggar Zhou Dalong. Even though our family wasn't wealthy, whenever he stood at our gate, my grandmother would hurry out with a bit of grain. She never showed the slightest dislike toward him. My elder sister said that with you all protecting Annie and Leo, she feels very relieved. In 2 months, I must travel to Tasshan. This time, I want to take the 2 children with me. My mouth fell open in shock. You're taking both of them? That's Tasshan. It's 600 li away. Adrian Wang fell silent for a moment. It really isn't ideal. But my sister-in-law misses her children terribly. I can't bear to let her worry day and night. Leo is fine, he's a boy. But Annie is a girl. It would be inconvenient for her to travel with us. We need someone familiar and trustworthy. Someone careful and steady. Someone who can eat, sleep, and play with her. Someone who can take care of her. What scheming? Why didn't he just report my birth date and horoscope directly while he was at it? Adrian Wang's trip to Tasshan in July had already been decided. Even though he said the Marquis's household there lacked nothing, starting in May, Madame Margaret Du and Grandma Li had already begun sewing padded clothes and hats. Besides clothing, they also prepared brushes, ink, paper, inkstones, notebooks, dried meat, dried vegetables, all kinds of nuts, medicines for chapped skin, remedies for colds and diarrhea, red tea, green tea, wild herb tea, along with every possible daily necessity. Altogether, the items nearly filled an entire carriage, yet Madame Margaret Du still felt that something was missing. After tossing and turning for several nights, she finally remembered. Don't forget to bring the calligraphy copybook Annie received from the academy, so her grandfather and parents can share in the joy. Although Annie was still young, she showed remarkable talent in poetry and writing. Recently, during a spring examination at the academy, her poem ranked second. Her teacher rewarded her with a precious copybook personally transcribed by a famous calligrapher. It was said to be extremely valuable. Clearly, Madame Margaret Du intended to show it off. Finally, Adrian Wang personally came to Peachwater Village to ask my family for permission for me to accompany Annie Du and Liu Chen to Tasshan. By all rights, I was a young girl approaching the age of coming of age. It really wasn't appropriate for someone like me to follow a merchant caravan on a long journey. But since Adrian Wang was the one who asked, and since both Grandma Li and my father Daniel Chen always praised him as a trustworthy man, our whole family finally agreed. Still, they warned me countless times to behave properly and guard my manners carefully. Honestly, they were worrying far too much. A village girl like me, who had grown up playing in the dirt, there were even times my backside had been exposed while climbing trees. How much attention could I possibly pay to delicate etiquette after lunch? Adrian Wang said he wanted to say farewell to Grandma. Then he asked me to walk him out. I escorted him to the large locust tree at the entrance of the village. There we ran into Martha Zhang, who was letting her 5-year-old son play in the mud beneath the tree. Ah, Xuanmi. She spotted me immediately and began shouting loudly, as if she wanted the entire village to hear. Isn't this your future husband? I've seen him come here 3 times already. Every time he brings gifts. So why haven't we heard anything about an engagement yet? Her voice was so shrill it practically pierced the sky. I snorted. Mrs. Zhang, have you eaten too much today? Too full to sit still? TSK. This little girl has quite the sharp tongue. She looked Adrian Wang up and down and smirked. Well, your man is quite good. Much better than that useless son-in-law your aunt married. Clearly, I was already unhappy, but she kept babbling on with those irritating, pointless remarks. Hearing it made my head ache. I immediately dropped all pretenses. Did new hair grow on your head recently? Should I call my grandmother out to pluck some of it off for you? Chen Zuan. Watch your mouth. You're still young. If you're bored, go keep an eye on that cheating man of yours. Make sure he knows his place. Don't think the people of Peachwater Village are blind. We all know how you chased that fellow around while your husband was still alive. Furious, Martha Zhang nearly rushed forward to start a fight, but the moment she noticed Adrian Wang standing beside me, she suddenly lost her courage. Grabbing her son, she stormed off angrily. Today Adrian Wang was wearing a white silk robe, a jade pendant hung at his waist. One glance was enough to tell he was a man of status. Widow Zhang might bully poor farmers, but she didn't dare provoke the wealthy. Humph. I was still fuming, but when I turned around, I saw Adrian Wang laughing. What are you laughing at? I frowned. He pointed at Widow Zhang's retreating back and shook his head smugly. I'm laughing because even a shrew like her has better judgment than you. What? You're proud because that loud-mouthed woman recognized your status? In July, beneath the blazing summer sun, the merchant caravan finally set out for Tasshan. Adrian Wang had prepared everything carefully. This time, he not only invited an experienced merchant who often traded in Tasshan to accompany us, but also hired 4 escorts from a security agency. They would protect the journey. I sat in the carriage together with Liu Chen and Annie Du. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.